Because what you, the unsung heroes in the wastewater industry, do matters. Join me, Suzan Chin-Taylor, the DooDoo Diva, a longtime veteran of the wastewater, trenchless, and civil infrastructure industry each week as I deliver industry know-how from industry pros who know how. Whether you want to learn about the latest trends in technology, training and retaining great talent, sales and marketing, leadership and growth, or simply how to be more efficient, productive, or profitable, this podcast is for you. Let's dive in. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the DooDoo Diva Smells Like Money podcast. We are continuing our visit with Chetan Shukla of Clean Environmental Technologies, and he is coming to us today all the way from around the world in Mumbai, India. And on our last episode, we were talking about this amazing technology that Chetan and his group are bringing into India, but this technology has also been placed in many countries, including the United States, because it got its roots and was actually developed in North America and then made its way across the globe. And one of the things about this technology, it would be considered a new technology, an innovative or maybe even disruptive technology. You know, I hate to use that term because sometimes it's being overused, but it is a little bit disruptive. Sustainable technology, green footprint. And as many technology providers know, many consulting engineers, and also those who are the younger set that would really love to incorporate some new technologies into their wastewater treatment projects or their plants, it often meets with a lot of resistance and a lot of fear. And so whether we're trying to do it in the United States, or for those of you who have maybe been thinking about moving into the international market, India being one of them, we're going to talk a bit about that. I know, because many of you know, that I have a footprint in India that, and Chetan may laugh at this, aside from having patience, a lot of patience and tenacity, as well as local representation or locals who can help you navigate the channels if you want to plant and have a footprint with technology in India, and India needs help. We're going to talk today about how do we start the process of getting adoption. And it seems like one of the key elements is policy and government leadership. And it needs to start there. And I have been hearing a lot of this with other consultants in North America, that once you get a product approved or on an approved list of methodologies, technologies, it makes your entry into getting buy-in that much easier. And so I think this is a universal thing, and I think Chetan will agree with me on here, that it all starts with the top and trickles down. And so I wanted him to share his experiences of what he's done in India with policy leadership, because I think some of the things that he has done and some of the real world examples he's going to share can be applied everywhere, North America, but other countries as well. And so with that, I'm going to zip my lip, and the stage is yours, Chetan, to share your wisdom and your experience and what's worked for you.
Okay, so thank you for having me here on this episode, Suzan. And for sure, see, when I started the process of getting into the wastewater field, I started with the basic stuff of getting microbes from US companies. They were very famous, making these lab-grown microbes, which work sometimes, they don't work sometimes, or most of the times they don't work. Right. And so finally, I came across an expert, Dr. Ari Mayan, who's in the US, and he was interested in doing these projects in India. He's got about 45, 50 years experience in this field. He's done quite a few of the wastewater facilities in the US. For sewage, and he's done, I think a couple of them he has done for effluents as well. And so we started off around 2007, and like, oh, I mean, India is a big market, and we'll just walk into it and get the work and all that.
No,
And
no.
I had connections with some of the state government people in the adjacent state, which is Gujarat. I'm in Mumbai, which is the state of Maharashtra. And, in India, and I know because I've been in the US, I studied in the US, I know how, they use different words. I mean, they use lobbying there. We use different words here in India. So it is all over the world. But I had a difficult time. I knew people in the state government, and I met the secretary of the Ministry of Urban Development, which are responsible for treating the wastewater for cities in the individual states. And they'd listen, they'd scratch their head, they wouldn't understand the technology naturally because it's not been there. So they'd talk about the conventional technology, oh, we want SBR, which is the single bed, or the MBBR, or the MBBR, MBR, and all those sort of things. And I said, all these activated sludge plants, they just use so much energy. So I said, how do I pitch? How do I sell? And so I came up with the concept of, making these wastewater facilities as income generators for the owners, because they are the ones who have to take out the money, for the projects. But it didn't work because they said, no, the Pollution Control Board says you have to only use this technology, that technology. And then I met a consultant and he said that, look, you won't get buy-in like this. You'll have to go to New Delhi and you have to speak, you will have to pitch to an organization called CPHEEO, okay, which is Central Public Health Environmental Engineering Organization. Now, that's the technical arm of Ministry of Urban Development at the center. So I made an appointment and I met the joint director of the CPHEEO. He called me for a presentation. We had about 10, 15 people in his room. We presented and he said, Mr. Shukla, this was around 2014, all right? We are now in 2020, 10 years back. He said, you're 9 months late. Looking at him like that. So what are you talking? He said, I've just come out with a new policy, 2013. If you had come 9 months earlier, I would have put your technology into this. So this is what I didn't know. And that doesn't necessarily mean that if I don't have my technology in CPHEEO, that I can't push it. So we started talking to different state governments. We started talking to Uttar Pradesh. In those times, it was not the present government, but it was the Samajwadi Party. So they are very corrupt. And so we thought we'd get in there. Everything was working out fine until the UP Jal Nigam engineers started, tying us up in knots because that's what they wanted. If they tie us in knots, they can ask for more and then they can. I told my colleague who was handling the government, I said, it's your lookout. I've done the pitch for the technical part of it. If we get something, fine. It was on the verge. And then the government went. New government came. So you have to be ready for all these things. Finally, I got a buy-in in Gujarat, but only with the understanding that I come in with the technology and I come in with the money, right? So I said, okay, I'll get a venture capitalist or a private equity involved. But, all these things take time because, you have to do due diligence. You do a project report, due diligence, and then why would a venture capitalist come in unless you don't have offtake agreements? So after the project report, then you have the you do the due diligence, you do everything out, then you work out the costs, the revenue streams, then you go and find offtake agreement for buyers. And the venture capitalist said, I want offtakes not with government departments, I want them with private, well-established, companies which are being quoted on the stock exchange. Now that makes it even more complicated.
Right.
So I said, all right, I'll do that. But the municipal corporation said, I give you 2 months. You have to do everything in 2 months. I said, I can't do everything in 2 months. You can't just be so, no, elections are coming. I have to show to my people that I have to do this. I'm doing something for the city. Otherwise, I'll lose the elections. And the politician was behind me. He said, because when I met the bureaucrat at the state capital, he said, we don't have such a policy for the state of Gujarat. And he said, if you take a ladder, you're on the first rung. So you understand what that means. Yes. You have to climb another 8, 9 rungs before you can get to the top. So I spoke to the politician. He said, you don't waste time there. You come here, I'll make you climb all the 8 rungs. But to do all this, to get the venture capitalists interested, to get the due diligence, to get the offtake agreements in 2 months was out. I said, no, I can't do it. It's impractical. So, it's not that it can't be done without you going to get your technology approved. And now, of course, with the new government, the NDA government, which came in 2014, there is no requirement that you need to get it approved for, let's say, even for the cleanup of the Ganges River. They had what was called the Namami Gange scheme. Anybody could apply, could show on a certain stretch the efficacy of the technology. And if it was found suitable, it would just be adopted. So things are changing quite a bit on the ground. But if you try and do it, even if you do get, let's say, a project going, it doesn't necessarily mean that you will get work in the different states. Because remember, India is 29 states. And each state has a pollution control board. Each state has its own environmental laws. Each state has their own whims and fancies of giving you approval, not giving. So you have to manage that.
That's just like here in the United States, 50 states. Every state has its own, there are federal laws, but each state has its own little set of things that are important to them. So I guess it comes down to get to know the people who can tell you, or get a champion on the inside, and get to know the people who, like you were saying, can help you get up the rungs of that ladder for adoption.
But with a time frame which is logical. I mean, you can't do anything in 2 months.
Right.
You can't do a study in 2 months.
Right, exactly. So now in your history, what things have worked for you in getting, whether they were installations or pilots or however you want to call them, how have you been able to get adoption? Did it, because always the first project is always the toughest to get. And then once you've got one, then the rest, you've got an example, it gets easier and easier to get them. What did you do to cross that hurdle to get that first one over?
So it's like this, if you get into the, as I said, if you try and get into the wastewater stream straight, there is also a lobby. Like you have a lobby in the US, only certain contractors can do defense projects. Everybody can't enter it, right? So we were working with a government agency in Gujarat, and they were all gung-ho until, of course, we didn't spell out how much money we would, how we take care of them. But the guys who were taking care of them said, this is going to affect our business, so you don't allow them in. So what happened was we don't concentrate in that fashion with, trying to break into the mainstream because that's very difficult. All right.
Right.
I'll give you an example. Like in Mumbai, someone told us, and I was also very keen that you do this project. Have you been to Mumbai?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a place in Mumbai called Bandra, all right, which is on the periphery of where South Mumbai gets over and the northern part of Mumbai begins. It's a tony area of Mumbai where all the people like to live. But the pond, or what we call as a talab, is highly polluted. It's called the Bandra Talab. And the Bombay Municipal Corporation. So that's one more rung. And I'm sure that's also the case in the US, that you have the federal, you have the state, and then you have the municipal.
Right.
So we have to go through all the three rungs, really do that. But the BMC had cleaned up a talab at about nearly 3 million, close to 3 million, 4 million US dollars few years back, 10, 15 years back. And so they wanted this, it's not a lake, it's between a lake and a pond, that's what you'd call it. It's not actually a pond, but it's neither a lake. It's little midway between the two. And they were ready to give us all the approvals and everything. And we got to the meeting. And then, of course, what happened was the G20 last year. So when I was to go and pitch to his boss, that meeting got deferred. Now that all the elections are over, we will start that process again. So there are several ponds, there are lakes, you take up one, that becomes a pilot. So in India, you have to do a pilot. I'm sure you have to do it in the US as well. You prove your antecedents, you prove your antecedents, and that's where from then on, you keep on getting them. But when I was talking to the engineer for the Bandra Talab, he said there is another problem that we have, that there is a law in India which says that any construction which is in a constructed area of 20,000 square meters has to have its own wastewater facility. But what happens to anything less than 20,000 square meters? They don't need it. So what do they do with their wastewater? They leave it into the storm drains. So there are huge storm drains. He says, can you do something about it? And now, when I'm doing this carbon capture project, we're bringing the two together. We're doing the first pilot in Gujarat over a 3-kilometer stretch. Once we prove that, we come here and we tell them, now we know how to treat your wastewater. We'll also do the carbon capture. We know how to do everything. We'll run it, we'll operate it, we'll maintain it. So this is how it happens. You have to keep waiting, patience, as you said.
You found he found a little opportunity for you to slide in where there wasn't regulation or there wasn't a rule for that particular thing, but it opened up an opportunity and a need. And so I guess it gets down to, it is all about relationships, is that if you hadn't established that relationship with him, even though he may not be the person that I say is going to sign on the line that hath dot, these people that you have relationships with can give you insight into ways that you can navigate the system and find opportunities. And so I think these are just universal principles that we just need to think outside of the way that we've always done things. That there is, I think it comes down to that tenacity that you've got something good, you just have to not give up. There is a way to bring these new technologies into play, to prove them, to install. And yes, you're going to hit that resistance. But I've just seen things that those who stay in the game after 3 or 4 no's, that typically by the time they get to the 9th no, at the 10th ask, someone will say, okay, let's give it a try. It's a
So,
it's a game, it's a
so,
matter of staying in the game and always looking for ways.
so Susan, it's like this. What you say is right. When you have so many no's, there is this famous Indian saying, I'm sure you have heard of it, which is called jugaad.
Oh
Or,
yeah.
we try and figure a way out to solve the problem. And so we innovate, right? And we see there are so many, and India is a big country, like the United States is a big country. And we know there are problems everywhere. We know where we have data from Pollution Control Board, whether it's the Central Pollution Control Board, whether it's the State Pollution Control Board, there is a problem with the river having high levels of pollution. In fact, just to tell you, the Bombay Municipal Corporation people, I have, where I live in Mumbai, we're very close to the sea, but just about less than 400 meters is a wastewater facility. And they receive 150 billion liters of water per day, which is approximately around five or seven. I may be wrong on the conversion, but 5 to 7 mgd, because a lot of the Americans understand million gallons per day. It's about 3.785 to 4. So if you take 150 and divide by 4, no, that's about nearly 35 mgd.
MGD a day. Wow, that's a lot.
And they only treat this to secondary level. And they only treat 60%. The balance 40% goes into the sea untreated. It goes untreated. So if you look at Google Earth around Mumbai, you will see in the Arabian Sea, there's a huge algal bloom, huge algal bloom.
Because of the release.
Because of the release. And, this is not the problem only in India. I know that there have been issues with untreated wastewater being disposed of in the United Kingdom. I know it is happening in France. I know it's happening in Spain. Because I keep track of it internationally. I know what's happening where. And in Spain, I've been following news that they're finding it even very difficult to treat wastewater even inland, which is within the country, I mean, coastal cities I can understand, but inland treatment is a problem in Spain. That I find really surprising. And I think it's basically governments have just become used to the fact that, okay, this is what we can manage. Take it or leave it, They're just overwhelmed.
They're overwhelmed. And I think it's also that fear of something new that, well, this is the way that we've always done it. But my argument to that is, well, does that mean that that's the way you should continue to do it? If we think about how laws have changed, how, just the era, everything has changed, that we as stewards or people in this industry, I don't work at a wastewater treatment, but I, I hear these stories coming across my desk as I interview and I talk to people, is that we need to embrace new technology, because that is going to be the only thing that's going to save us going forward. And not all new technology is great, but we should not fear the new, because it could be exactly the thing that we need, that we couldn't even, people are coming up with these innovative ideas that are doing things like you were saying, that look at all those things from this technology that you're working with that can take the residue and all the different things that could be made out of it. It almost seems like, well, we could do this, we could do that, we could do this, and we could that. Wow. 50 years ago, we probably never would have imagined that somebody could do something like that. And so it's just inviting the world to open up your mind to the possibility of what could be done.
So, I was just, before I came on the podcast, I was just looking at my LinkedIn feed, and there is this Iranian expert who I know, and he's just put a paper out on LinkedIn saying that using microalgae, he's been able to produce biocement. Imagine.
Oh, the stuff that is happening out there, it's almost like science fiction, but it's really not. It, like I said, it's stuff that 50 years ago we never in our wildest dreams thought would be possible. I mean, we even think about this, okay? Who would have thought, we can tell our age, Snow on the Roof, you're a little bit younger than I'm, but who would have thought that we would have this, and in this one device, we'd be able to take pictures, film videos, or make movies, like movie cameras, make phone calls, send data. I mean, so with that, this has been great. A lot of food for thought here on how we need to go about introducing new technology that stay tenacious, be inventive, make connections, just keep talking about it, and the doors will open. We have what is that biblical, saying that knock and the door shall be opened, ask and you shall receive. And so for those of us out there who are trying to push new technology, new ideas, keep knocking on those doors. Keep asking, and it will happen.
It's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
And
this is all I can say.
It is not a sprint. It is a marathon.
It's a marathon.
So Chetan, thank you for having this dialogue with me about new technology and breaking down barriers. Really appreciate it. And for those of you listening, I hope you got something out of both of these episodes with Chetan. I'm kind of on a roll with a sustainability series almost. I'm going to have some guests coming up very soon that also have technology that is, tied to this, but all about sustainability and generating industry, not industry, but energy. So just keeping the minds open. And so thank you for joining. And until next time, keep it flowing.
Be sure to subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode. If you're an industry expert and would like to be considered as a guest on the show, click the Be a Podcast guest link below in the show notes for more information. Thanks again for joining me, the DooDoo Diva, on this week's episode of the Smells Like Money podcast.